What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Manga Sutra Manga review, and in today's video we're going to be talking about a horror shonen manga called Jigoku Kozou. Now, Jigoku Kozou is very interesting because it is Bram Stoker's Dracula meets Frankenstein meets Pet Sematary in the form of a child. We are following our main character Rosetsu Emma and his son Daiao Emma. Now, the manga starts off with two doctors in this room full of cadavers in this tub of fluid meant to preserve the corpses. And as they're fishing out a corpse for dissection, we transition to another panel in which there is a room full of doctors and medical students, and one of the doctors is performing a dissection on a corpse and is explaining to the rest of the group that the liver is cancerous. And we see that some of the medical students are disturbed and they are sickened. And the doctor explains to them that in time they'll get used to it. In another panel, we see the doctor leaving the room and instructing them to take the liver and put it in formalin in order to preserve it so they can observe the cancerous effects. Now, we see that this doctor is our main character, Rosetsu Emma. He is this very stern, grim, serious looking man. And we learn that Rosetsu Emma is a world-renowned prodigy and genius in medicine, and he is world-renowned for his expertise. But despite all of this, he chooses to instruct young medical students at the University Hospital of Inferno. And we learn furthermore that rings more bells to Bram Stoker's Dracula and Frankenstein, that he lives on a castle overlooking the entire village called Inferno, and that the castle is often nicknamed by the villagers Castle Hell, with a mixture of adoration and fear, right? But despite Rosetsu Emma's very serious, grim, stern appearance, we learn that he has a beautiful wife. He has a very jubilant and intelligent son that he considers his pride and joy, and that outside of his work, he's actually a very caring and doting father. And we see Daiao playing with his mother outside, and we see that his father's asking him, hey, do you have a couple more days off? And his son is like, yeah, I do. And the father proposes that they all go on a trip and they go somewhere and have fun. And we see them driving on a road. But unfortunately, they get into a car accident and Rosetsu's son Daiao dies because he has a piece of metal that becomes lodged in his skull. This causes immense grief to both his wife and himself over the loss of their son. And as they bury their son at the family graveyard, they finish the burial rites. This old woman appears and she is telling Rosetsu and his wife that his son can be brought back. Now, Rosetsu, he's in disbelief and he's kind of enraged. He's asking her, how did you get here? Why are you here? And you really expect me to believe such rubbish? But the old woman is explaining that there is a special claw or fang that she has, and that all Rosetsu needs to do is shed the blood of a child or boy of similar age to Daiao over his grave in order to resurrect him. And as she's being escorted out by one of the guards, because Rosetsu has lots of servants apparently, similar to Dr. Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula. I just love it. I love it so much. But as she's being escorted out, she throws the fang or the claw to Rosetsu and she says, if you don't believe me, you can do it yourself. And the wife, she catches it. And we see that the wife is actually receptive to the idea of sacrificing a young child in order to bring back their own. And we see that despite Rosetsu's grim and stern appearance, I actually thought he would be more receptive to the idea, but it turns out he's not. He's actually kind of taken aback by his wife's receptiveness to it, because the idea of sacrificing someone else's child to bring back his own is absurd. But his wife makes a really good point of, you are a doctor, you treat a lot of children that are terminally ill. It is not hard to find a child that is about to die and just sacrifice them because they're going to die anyways, and we can bring back our son. He wrestles with the idea for a while, but he gets himself and his servant to go to the hospital in the middle of the night. They take a young boy who has leukemia and they create a contraption to dangle him over the grave. And the boy is crying for help, but We see Dr. Rosetsu is wrestling with his morality here. He's saying, please forgive me. You must forgive me. You were going to die within a week or so. It wouldn't have mattered. And he slits the boy's throat, and the blood falls over the grave. And after a while, the grave begins to move, and we see this creature emerge. And this creature looks like a mixture of Frankenstein and a traditional vampire. It has these fangs, it's half decomposed, like it's from Pet Cemetery. And Rosetsu's wife becomes delirious. And I think this is because her mind is overwhelmed by what she's seeing. Her son is resurrected from the dead, but what emerges is not technically their son, even though it is calling Rosetsu dad. And as Rosetsu is trying to process everything that's happening, the old woman comes and she is demanding payment. And Rosetsu is just like, I'm not paying for that. That's not my son. And the old woman is arguing with him that that is his son and that she does demand payment. And as this is going on, Daao, as this creature, bites into the old woman's neck, and there's a lot of blood gushing out. And we see Daao just basically consuming this. And as the old woman is presumably dead, and Daao has consumed this flesh and drained this blood, we see Daao return to his human form. And he has no recollection of where he is or how he got in the graveyard or that he even died. And this catches Rosetsu off guard. And as they're processing this, they take the old woman's corpse and they proceed to take Daao back home. But they take the old woman's corpse, they take her far, far away, and they throw her in a ditch. The next morning, the old woman's corpse is right in front of their entrance with a message carved in blood, I curse you. Now, this is confusing Rosetsu because they dumped her 20 kilometers away. How does a old woman that was presumably dead somehow travel 20 kilometers to write the message, I curse you, on his doorstep of his castle entrance? But if that's not enough, he has the authorities looking into the situation. We have this chief detective or inspector, Hanamizu. And Hanamizu is on to something. He has a hunch. All right. He's looking at Rosetsu kind of suspiciously. He's saying, hey, none of this makes sense. You know, why is this by your castle entrance? You know, didn't you lose a son recently? And all of this other stuff. And Rosetsu just like, you can't really suspect me, right? And, you know, Hanami's like, nah, I'm not suspecting you. I'm just saying, you know, it's all a little bit odd. Just a little quaint that this is all happening next to your residence. And right on cue, the wife, who is still extremely delirious, is stating, our son was resurrected. And Rosetsu is looking at his servant, and he's like, how could you let her out? So they take her back inside, with a little bit of some back and forth. Hanamizu kind of just drops, and he's just like, okay, don't leave town, but I don't suspect you yet, but don't you leave town. As they go back home, later on that day, we see that one of the servants tells Rosetsu that Daao has some problems, or he's experiencing some issues, and they go to his room or his containment cell, and we see that Daao has returned to this monstrous form. And Rosetsu commands his servant to bring what he asked, which was a rabbit or a bunny. And they release the rabbit into the cell, and the creature lunges for the rabbit, bites its head off, and consumes the flesh. And after that, Daao returns to his humanoid form. And so he's just asking, why am I locked up in here? What's going on? And as all of that's going on, the wife is in another room, and she's saying, this is hell. This is hell. So she is still experiencing delirium. And Rosetsu is telling his son, just hold on a little bit longer. Don't worry, just hold on a little bit longer. And we see a father's love for his child. We see this doctor trying to figure out what is causing his son to transform. What is wrong with his son fundamentally? And he's trying to do whatever it takes to fix it. Now, second chapter, and I'm not going to be talking about any of this in chronological order too much. So, forgive me if I don't get the chapter 2 chronologically correct, right? Chapter 2, he is trying to figure out what is the cause of the metamorphosis. So he performs surgery on his son. He manages to extract the metal that was lodged in his son's head. But his son is still experiencing headaches. We find out later on, or we see in another panel, that a young woman is traveling in the middle of the night. She's being chased by this creature, which we learn is Vaero, or Resetsu's son. And the creature kills her, consumes her, and, it shows up in the news that there is another attack with bite marks similar to the old woman's, and they assume that it's either an animal, that's a wild animal, or some type of creature. They don't take what type of creature it is, but Resetsu is wondering, and he's suspecting that it's his son, right? After the surgery done on his son, he sends his son back to school. Everybody is noting that it's kind of weird because there was already a burial done for Vaero, right? And that it seemed like he was pretty much dead, They went through the whole burial rites and all of this other types of stuff, but apparently all the villagers, they're all thinking this, apparently Resetsu, because of his great medical knowledge, was able to perform life-saving miraculous surgery on his son. And that's why Vaero is in school, right? And he still has like this bandage on his head from where the wound was from the metal shrapnel. But what's also really sad here is in chapter 2, we see that after he performed the surgery on his son, he seems very happy. He seems very happy, very proud of himself. He's thinking that he's fixed the problem. He's thinking he fixed the problem. But again, his son transforms into this creature and lurks in the night. And then this creature kills an entire family. It kills not only the father by decapitating him, but it also consumes the mother. And then as the two kids walk into the room, it consumes and kills all of them. And at this point, Resetsu is onto it, and Vaero is onto it. Vaero knows it's him. He knows it's him, right? He's telling his father he's having nightmares of being in hell, of torturing people that he's already killed, of torturing the old lady, the young girl, the family, right? And this is bothering his father because he cannot stop this transformation that's happening to his son. He cannot stop it. And his son is deeply terrified and bothered by it as well because he knows he's becoming this monster. He knows that he's hurting these people. And drastic times call for drastic measures and drastic actions. Resetsu's father, trying to stop these transformations, believes that what's causing his son to transform is a brain injury. That even though he removed the shrapnel, the brain injury and the brain damage is already done. And that what he needs is another brain. So what he does is he gets his servant and they go and they hunt for an intelligent young boy. And they decapitate the boy. They take his head. Then they take it back to his laboratory. And then they remove the brain. And then they transfer the brain to his son's skull. And apparently, Dr. Resetsu is such a medical prodigy, such a surgical genius. He can even transfer memories. So he transfers his son's memories into the new brain. And that is the end of the chapter. It ends with the servant asking Dr. Resetsu, what if this doesn't work? And Dr. Resetsu says, if this doesn't work, the only thing I have left is to join my son in hell. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I really like this manga. I really like it. Its art style is very classical. It's very simplistic. It's not anything like these other modern mangas in the sense that, it's very high detail with like hair and facial features. No, it's very classical. It definitely gives you the Bram Stoker Frankenstein feel to it. And just I just like the facial expressions. Like I definitely do like the classical art style, the facial expressions, um, and how some of the characters look kind of like comical and goofy. Like Hanamizu, he has this big nose, this square head. On top of that, just the stark contrast between Diao in his human form and Diao is this creature. Diao is this creature, looks like Frankenstein, had a baby with a vampire, and as this kid, he looks like he's like Go-Go Speed Racer, you know, pretty much. His father looks like this stern and calculated and evil mad scientist, but when you really get to know him and you learn the intentions and the motivations that drive him to do the things he does, is just an intense fatherly love for his son and a deep rooted sense of trying to help his son and save his son, and that he doesn't do all of these heinous evil things out of pure malice and bloodthirst. He does this reluctantly because he feels like he has to do increasingly more drastic things in order to save his son. Now, I don't know whether if he just paid the old lady, if his son would have just been perfectly fine, but obviously at this point it was outside of his control. It was outside of his control. At least from my opinion, the first chapter, his son bit the old lady and killed her. It's not like the father was like, screw you, I'm not going to pay you, even though he kind of did. He did say, I'm not going to pay you for this. But it's not like he just said, screw you, and then he murdered her himself intentionally. His son murdered her out of bloodthirst and out of hunger, and she just died, you know, as an accident. And unfortunately, this is a chain of events that has been snowballing because of that. One thing I also like, and I'm just gonna have to look at this because I have to look at the artist. Because one thing I really did like, and I'm gonna point it out here, is Hino Hideshi, the author of this manga. He has plugged himself in his manga twice. I love it. I love it. I just love it so much. He plugged himself in his manga twice. As Diao is chasing this young woman through the streets in the middle of the night, she hides next to a movie theater. And there's a horror film, or there is something on there, and it says Hino Hideshi, you know, master of horror. And then also, when Diao is back at school and his classmates are gossiping behind his back, they say it's something out of a horror manga from Hino Hideshi. And I just love that. I love how he plugged himself into his own manga, into his own works. That is actually very quaint, and I like it. I actually really do enjoy reading this, and I'm going to continue reading this. I'm only 2 chapters in. I think there's about like 7, 8, probably 9 chapters out. I would recommend that you read this manga, especially if you're looking for something more so like you want to save it for like Halloween and you want to save it for like the month of October. This is it. If you want something that gives you a Bram Stoker, Frankenstein, Pet Cemetery feel and has a classical art style, this is it. This is going to get you there. This has the atmosphere. This has the intensity that you're looking for. And the characters in many ways are not just like cutouts. They're very relatable. A lot of the things that Rosetsu does is understandable. I think the only thing I can't understand at this point is how he goes to great lengths to save Diao or however you pronounce his son's name. He goes to great lengths to stop him from transforming, or try to stop him from transforming, but he's not addressing his wife's delirium, right? His wife is delirious. She is slowly losing her grip on her sanity, and he's not actually addressing it. He is tunnel vision on saving his son, but he's losing his wife as well on the side. So that's one thing I'm just kind of trying to see if he's going to address that in later chapters. But like, that's my thoughts on this. Hopefully you guys like this manga, and hopefully you like this video. If you want to see more manga reviews, please subscribe, please like the video, and if you want to become a member, it's only 99 cents a month. I appreciate it. Bye.